ready to start when you are.
Great. Well, good evening. Welcome to the regular Bellevue City Council meeting for March 14th, 2022. Tonight, our city manager, Mr. Brad Miyake, is on vacation, and so we have Nathan McCommon filling in as our deputy city manager. City clerk, could you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Mayor Robinson.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Neuenhouse.
Here.
Councilmember Barksdale.
Here.
Councilmember Lee.
Here.
Councilmember Robertson.
I'm here.
Councilmember Stokes.
Here.
And Councilmember Zahn.
Here.
Thank you.
Councilmember Barksdale, could you please lead us in the flag salute?
So I pledge allegiance to the flag
The flag.
of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God,
indivisible, with
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have a proclamation tonight. It's Women's History Month, and I've asked that all the council members share in reading the proclamation, starting with Councilmember Barksdale.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Whereas Women's History Month celebrates the vital contributions of women to our society and recognizes specific achievements women have made over the course of history in a variety of fields, and
whereas Women's History Month began as Women's History Week in 1981, when Congress authorized and requested the week to be proclaimed beginning March 7th, 1982, and
Whereas in countless recorded and unrecorded ways, American women of every race, class, and ethnic background have made historic impacts to the growth and strength of our nation, state, and local communities. And
whereas American women have been leaders, not only in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also in the abolitionist movement, the emancipation movement, the industrial labor movement, the civil rights movement, and other efforts, including the peace movement, which strives to create a more just society for all. And
we must reflect on the significant burdens women and girls continue to bear today, particularly women of color, including unequal wages, disproportionate childcare responsibilities, lack of access to health care, and loss of employment, especially during the pandemic, while acknowledging that much more needs to be done to overcome these barriers. And
whereas equity, access, inclusion, and an opportunity for all people are values at the core of the City of Bellevue's community vision and the ongoing work of the Diversity Advantage Plan. And
whereas recognizing the importance of women's contributions helps to ensure that these efforts will not be overlooked in the literature, teaching, and study of American history. Now, therefore, I, Lynn Robinson, Mayor of the City of Bellevue, Washington, and on behalf of its entire City Council, do hereby proclaim March as Women's History Month and call upon all Bellevue residents to observe this month with programs, ceremonies, and activities. For more information on virtual events and discussions, please reach out to womenshistorymonth.gov. Okay, thank you, everybody. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Okay. City Clerk, do we have anybody signed up for oral communications?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This evening, there are 6 pre-registered speakers. And with that, I will call the first speaker, who is Chanel Wickham. And Ms. Wickham, can you hear me? Ms. Wickham, can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, thank you. Your time begins now.
Thank you for the opportunity to be heard. I'm coming forward today to create an open discussion regarding a flaw I have found in the ability to regulate a state law here in Washington, which is the landlord-tenant law. It seems that there's a major jurisdiction conflict in Bellevue where landlords are able to, without cause or reason, demand exorbitant fines and fees out of tenants, therein negating their contracted lease agreement, yet are not held accountable to the law. I have documented several instances of code violations and state laws being broken, as well as heard several other testimonies, yet the local code enforcement is still unable to do anything. State landlord-tenant laws are put in place to protect hardworking Americans and families that rent their homes. My concern is, how are these laws enforced? How can we address this flawed system that does not currently in this jurisdiction have the ability to protect renters from scams, fraud, harassment, or threatening coercion? So far, I have learned that the only way to pursue action against a law-breaking landlord is via civil claims. Then I ask, why is it even called code enforcement if in fact they cannot enforce codes and laws? My only other option is to go to the hardworking police that already have their hands full to ask them what? To help me with my landlord? No, I think that this is a flaw in a policy that needs to be looked at. In these hard times, it's been proven that there has been a huge spike in scams and fraud. Please help me create a policy that will protect the members of this beautiful community and hold landlords responsible when they break the law by giving code enforcement more power to demand compliance or impose fines. If you're interested in seeing the exact laws I'm learning cannot really be enforced by anyone, I'm happy to email them to you. And I do have an open claim with code enforcement as well. I'd be happy to disclose. At this time, I do not have a simple solution for a policy to be put in place, but I feel strongly that after researching my claims and the many claims of others, combined with code enforcement's input, that we can come up with a resolution. I'll leave you with this scary thought. As a tenant, you can be evicted and on the street in a matter of days, even if you've always paid your rent and utilities on time, if you do not agree to hand over hundreds or thousands of dollars to your landlord at random. That can happen in days. However, if a landlord scams a tenant like I just described, it could take you several months to hold the landlord accountable, if ever, for breaking a state law. Homelessness is just one of these situations away, and I ask that you help me protect families from ending up on the streets because they refuse to comply with a shady landlord. Help me prevent this from continuously happening here in Bellevue and creating a new policy for code enforcement. Thank you so much for the time today to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Wickham. The next speaker on the list is Mark Walters. Mr. Walters, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Your time begins now.
Yes. Good evening, Council. My name is Mark Walters. You've heard from us in the past. I'm with the Loch Levin Community Association, and you may have heard that the applicant for the Chimneys condo site rezone withdrew his application. And we wanted to speak this evening to thank the Planning Commission staff, in particular Dr. Kate Nessie and Thara Johnson, for their patience in educating us on the process, answering all of our questions. And we had a lot of questions, and they were super helpful to us in this process. There's probably people behind the scenes in the Planning Commission staff that also helped and participated, and we wanted to thank them. We want to thank the City of Bellevue Public Records Request officers who helped us by responding to our public records requests. And we want to thank the Planning Commissioner members as well, also for their patience with us in this process. It was a steep learning curve for us, and we learned a lot, and we enjoyed the process, and we're appreciate the City of Bellevue's assistance and response from top to bottom. We also want to thank Councilmember Barksdale and Neuenhouse for coming out and meeting with us on a Saturday and going on our neighborhood walk. And we kept you guys over, and we're sorry for that, but we appreciate your patience, and we all enjoyed getting to know you. So thank you very much for that too. And with that, I will conclude.
Thank you, Mr. Walters. The next speakers, actually the next three speakers on the list are combined into a group. And yep, thank you, Risa. They have a PowerPoint presentation that they would like to share during their comment period. I will share the screen and then ask the first speaker and time the 3 minutes separately. I will let you know when you've reached your 3 minutes. So Kirsta English, can you hear me?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Your time begins now.
Hello, my name is Kirsty English. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I'm the mother of 3 children in the Bellevue Public Schools. I'm also a small business owner in the city of Bellevue. I moved here in 2018 from Seattle to be closer to nature, to be part of a thriving economy, and to send my kids to well-funded public schools. I grew up in Oregon, And Bellevue trees were a big draw for me and my family. In the past 4 years, I've seen things changing around my neighborhood and the city as a whole. 7 large cedars were recently cut down across the street from me. I started a nonprofit called Trees for Livability in December in response to this issue. As part of this effort, I raised interest from 50 plus community members and 10 civic organizations in a quick time period. We compiled a tree code study with findings and recommendations for the City Council. We are here to present this to you today and to cover some of the introductory concepts. Bellevue has some of, I'm sorry, next slide, please. Thank you. Bellevue has some of the most permissive tree codes in the region. All around town, large trees are coming down. When I started Trees for Livability, I started receiving stories from all over town about large, healthy trees coming down. In these pictures, you can see significant trees that are 25 to 45 years old removed. Next slide, please. We have a public-facing petition for members of the community to urge the City Council to make updates to tree codes in 2022. We have an optional field. Here you can see a user quote about what makes Bellevue amazing. We're just here to talk to you today about some of the market changes, some of the things we can do to make things better. One thing to keep in mind is that commuting has significantly decreased. Proximity to downtown is no longer as necessary as it once was. Telecommuters can work from anywhere and will choose livable neighborhoods with good schools, police, and tree cover. Bellevue, beautiful view, is unique in our area. We have beautiful trees close to the downtown area, but that is changing. We are here to ask you to help us keep Bellevue a city in a park. In order to do this, we need to take quick, decisive action. I'm going to go ahead and conclude my remarks and pass it over to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. English. The next speaker is Alex Hay. Mr. Hay, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Your 3 minutes begins now.
Thank you. Hello, Council. My name is Alex Hay. I first moved to Bellevue in 2003, and since then I've lived in a few of our neighborhoods, including Factoria, Somerset, Northwest Bellevue, and now my home in Lake Hills. What drew me to Bellevue in the first place and what's kept me here, other than the obviously fantastic location, is how green the city is. I recently became involved with Trees for Livability because I've seen lots of trees coming down in my own neighborhood, and I know the same thing's happening all over Bellevue. I'm here tonight to explain why now is the time to make a change. Next slide, please. And actually, one more slide. Thanks. As we know, the entire Puget Sound region has experienced explosive population growth and massive demand for new housing. And the pandemic's put greater value on dedicated home offices, so the houses being built now are bigger than ever. This trend of local population growth with larger houses will continue to grow as office space built in Bellevue increases. I'm sure you're all aware that Amazon has millions of square feet of office space coming online in Bellevue in the next few years, and lots of those well-compensated incoming workers will be looking for larger and newer homes. One way local builders are meeting a lot of this need for housing is by demolishing smaller, older homes and building the larger modern homes. Last year, Bellevue issued 4 times as many demolition permits as a decade earlier. And when these homes are demolished, the lots are often scraped bare, removing all the trees. So the fantastic increase in well-paying jobs in Bellevue is unfortunately also accelerating the destruction of our tree canopy. I want to show you a few photos to give you an idea how that looks. Next slide, please. This is a typical lot after the home and the trees are removed. You do see trees on the neighboring lots because those lots haven't been redeveloped yet. But you can probably imagine how this will appear in 5 or 10 years if we continue to see lot after lot developed in this manner. Pretty soon there won't be any neighbor trees. Next slide, please. The house on the bottom left is in the neighborhood where one of my friends lived. The developer took out 6 large cedars, and this photo shows the last one, which the homeowner removed after they purchased the home from the builder. Another friend sent us the photo on the right. You can see that this lot near her house has been cleared of all the beautiful trees. Sally moved to Bellevue because she loved the character of her neighborhood, including the abundant trees. And now that trees in her neighborhood are disappearing, she's actually considering moving and has been looking at homes outside Bellevue and other locations that better protect their tree canopy. Next slide, please. With this spike in development, we really need to strengthen our tree codes now in 2022 before our significant and landmark trees are demolished. We can't get these trees back in our lifetimes, so the time for decisive action is now. Thank you. I'd like to pass the baton to the next speaker and advance the slide. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Hay. The final speaker in this group is Ruthless Lipscomb. Ms. Lipscomb, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Your 3 minutes begins now.
Okay, could you move to the next slide, please? Thank you. One back, please. My name is Ruth Lipscomb, and I'm a resident of Bellevue from Newport Shores. I was drawn to Trees for Livability because I treasure the mature trees in my own neighborhood and in all areas of the city. I've been very distressed to see so many trees removed unnecessarily. I'm here to ask you today to take decisive action and make an update of the tree code ordinances a high priority in 2022. Next slide, please. We compared, members of Trees for Livability formed a working group, which I was part of. Over a number of weeks, we researched the tree codes of nearby cities and compared them to the codes here in Bellevue. This slide shows a few of the many cities we looked at. Next slide, please. What we found is that Bellevue's tree codes are by far the most permissive in the Puget Sound region. For example, Bellevue allows the removal of 5 significant trees without a permit. These trees are 25 to 45 years old. And we have no special protections for landmark trees, which most cities identify as those 2 feet or more in diameter, and which can take 100 to 150 years to grow to that size. Other cities in our region that value their tree canopy have taken action to slow the removal of these older trees. Next slide, please. Last week, we emailed the City Council a copy of the Bellevue Tree Code study created by Trees for Livability. It includes our recommendations for updating the rules, and it contains detailed references. I would like to note that this report is intended for the residential areas of Bellevue outside of bridle trails, because that sub-area already has strict tree protections. Next slide, please. Our report has been endorsed by all the organizations listed here, and we're getting more endorsements every week. Next slide, please. We also have a tree code petition on our website that has gained, as of today, over 250 signatures in just a few weeks. Our grassroots group has formed from concerned citizens from many backgrounds and in many professions, from students to retirees, engineers to teachers. We have members in neighborhoods from Ennetai to Lake Hills, bridle trails to Crossroads, Somerset to Sherwood Forest. People all over the city are coming together. From the heart of our community, we urge you to strengthen Bellevue's tree codes in 2022. We are here to help and to partner with you in that effort. Next slide, please. For those of you on the City Council, you should have the tree code study in your inboxes already. For everyone else, please visit our website and get involved. Thank you so much for your time, and we appreciate your service to our community. This ends our presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Lipscomb. And that brings us to our final speaker on the list, which is Steve Phantel. Mr. Phantel, it looks like you're using an older version of Zoom. I'm going to promote you to a panelist momentarily and just ask that you not turn your video on. Mr. Phantel, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Your time begins now.
Thank you, and good evening. My name is Steve Phantel. I have lived in the Somerset West neighborhood for 27 years. In retirement, I started Bellevue Green and Clean as a way to give back and to encourage others to do the same by building community around environmental stewardship. That's not my dog, but it will be in a minute. We all love our city in a park, but let's face it, Bellevue has a litter problem, and that problem is getting worse. The rapid growth of our city has resulted in a multitude of bottles, wrappers, cigarette butts, and so much more scattered about on sidewalks, parking lots, gutters, and public places. As evidence, weekly cleanup events hosted by the grassroots group Overdue have collected over 2,600 pounds of litter just since last April. And I personally have picked up over 6,400 pieces of litter myself. This is not the Bellevue that we want. Litter cleanups by Bellevue Green and Clean and Overdue cannot address the problem by themselves. That's why Bellevue Green and Clean is leading a campaign to request that the City Council create an Adopt a Street program for Bellevue. With Adopt a Street, residents partner with government, businesses, civic and faith organizations, and schools to work towards a common goal of a greener and cleaner place to live, to work, and to play. Who participates in Adopt a Street? Friends and family do. So do neighbors and neighborhood associations. Churches and synagogues do. So do scout troops, garden clubs, and PTSA groups. Small businesses and large companies do too. In addition to beautification and pollution mitigation of our city and waterways, participation in Adopt a Street increases civic pride in an inclusive and engaging way. Seattle runs a successful Adopt a Street program. So do Kent, Auburn, Tacoma, King County, and so many other cities and counties across our state and across the country, whether big or small, wealthy or modest. The city of SeaTac recently started their own program during the pandemic. We want Adopt a Street here in Bellevue too, and we want it this year. Leveraging the cost-effective models from decades of success elsewhere means no time-consuming and expensive studies are needed here in order to get started. Litter and litter control are not even mentioned at all in the City of Bellevue's Environmental Stewardship Plan. As the 5th largest city in Washington, Bellevue should be a leader in environmental stewardship, but when it comes to Adopt a Street, Bellevue is not leading. In fact, we're not even following. I will be delivering a letter of support for Adopt a Street signed by Bellevue residents to the City Council this week. I urge you to prioritize this important community building and environmentally responsible initiative. It's the green and clean thing to do, and thank you for your support.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Phantel. That reaches the end of our pre-registered list of speakers this evening. If you are connected to this meeting and you would like to make communication to the council, please use the raise hand function or *9 if you're connected with a phone. Ms. Wickham, I see your hand. Unfortunately, we can only comment one time per meeting. Mr. Sargent, Lee Sargent, can you hear me?
I can.
Thank you. Your time begins now.
I've been worried about the way in which our tree canopy has been diminishing within Sherwood Forest, where I live and have lived for 40 years. In the last week, we've had 5 trees disappear from one lot, with the statement from the Bellevue City that basically, that's okay. These were not small trees. These were probably 24-inch trees at the minimum. And I had people standing around looking at it and shaking their heads and trying to figure out what's going on. We don't have any penalties for people removing trees. We don't even have a requirement for them to report trees if they're removing them. So how are we keeping track of this particular thing? I think there's some big missing pieces here in trying to make people really think that we're trying as a city to maintain the trees and the beauty that currently is here. I don't think there's much more that I can say. But I do say that I've seen enough of being with the city in doing things like with the great neighborhoods and with other events that I've been involved with, the planning committee, to know that there's problems going on and they're being ignored and we need to do something about it. Unless, of course, we don't want to have trees, and then that's already happening. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sargent. We have reached the maximum number of speakers regarding the tree canopy at this point. If there was anyone else who would like to make communication to the council, please use the raise hand function or *9 if you're connected with a phone. And Mayor, I do not see any additional hands. That would close oral communications.
Okay, thank you. You will see in the packet, there's a quarterly report from the Parks and Community Services Board. That's read only. Next, we have the consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, we have some study session items here tonight. Mr. McCommon, would you like to introduce the first one?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The next item for council's consideration seeks direction for establishing June 19 as a formally recognized holiday by the City of Bellevue. Tonight's presentation will share with the Council the historical significance of the date and similar actions that the state of Washington and other jurisdictions have taken. Presenting to the Council is Human Resources Director Joy St. Germain, and with that, I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Neuenhuis, and City Council members. I'm happy to share information with you about a proposed City Code amendment. Following this study session presentation, staff is seeking Council direction to prepare an ordinance amending the City Code to add Juneteenth as a paid holiday for City employees for final action at a future meeting. If I may speak briefly about the image on this slide, this is the Juneteenth flag, a symbolic representation of the end of slavery in the United States. The flag was created in 1997 by Ben Haith, who's the founder of the National Juneteenth Celebration Foundation, with the help of illustrator Lisa Jean Graff. The star symbol in the center of the flag represents Texas, the Lone Star State, as it was in Galveston, Texas in 1865, where Union soldiers informed the country's last remaining enslaved people that under the Emancipation Proclamation, issued 2 years earlier, that they were free. The star also represents the freedom of African Americans in all 50 states. The bursting outline around the star was inspired by a nova, a term that astronomers use to define a new star. On the Juneteenth flag, this represents a new beginning for African Americans in the United States. The curve that extends across the width of the flag represents a new horizon, the opportunities and promise that lay ahead for Black Americans. Finally, the red, white, and blue colors represent the American flag, a reminder that slaves and their descendants were and are Americans. For this study session, I will provide background information, a recommendation, share some considerations, and request Council direction. On the background, on June 19, 1865, more than 2 years after Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, news that slavery was abolished and that all enslaved people had been freed was announced in Galveston, Texas by Union soldiers. The historic significance of Juneteenth is that it observes the end of slavery in practice in the United States, as well as recognizes the contributions of Americans of African descent to our society. Last year, during the 2021 regular session, the Washington State Legislature passed a law establishing June 19th, recognized as Juneteenth as a state holiday. The bill stated in part that the adoption of the paid holiday is to recognize the catastrophic and unrelenting legacy of trauma for generations of Black African Americans caused by slavery, and that the historical and continued harms of slavery and the rejoicing of the end of this atrocity should be acknowledged and celebrated by all Washingtonians. This year, there will be an additional paid holiday for state employees. And in June last year, President Biden signed the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act into law, recognizing Juneteenth as the 12th federal holiday. The option for the City of Bellevue, there is a revised Code of Washington, 116050, that states that the legislative body of a local government may choose to adopt the state's holiday schedule or to adopt more or fewer holidays by resolution or ordinance. Staff recommends that the city recognize Juneteenth as a paid city holiday for city employees to celebrate the end of slavery. The Juneteenth holiday for the city as an employer would be comparable with other government jurisdictions that have adopted Juneteenth as a paid holiday, including those listed. I won't read those, but I'll stay for a minute here. Staff is seeking council direction to prepare an ordinance amending the city code to add Juneteenth as a paid holiday for city employees for final action at a future meeting. Thank you very much. I'm happy to respond to any questions you might have.
Thank you, Joy. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Go ahead and raise your hand if you do. I see Councilmember Robertson. I see Councilmember Barksdale, Stokes, and Zahn. Go ahead, Councilmember Robertson.
Thank you. I'm very supportive of this action. I would like to see this come back, and I know it's going to take some time to implement it. So if this could come back on consent as soon as an ordinance can be written, that would be great. I also would support the city buying a Juneteenth flag in order. Now this year it's on a Sunday, but in order to fly it on the days around and near the holiday, on the holiday. So.
Great.
So this year, I guess one question would be, this year, since the June 19th is on a Sunday, would the holiday be on the Monday?
Yes, it would be on the, yes.
Yeah. Well, I would support doing that, bringing it on consent, getting a flag and putting it up Friday and flying it through Tuesday. I think that would be a really good way to kind of show the people of Bellevue, we're recognizing this, we're celebrating it. I think it's a very visual reminder of that. So thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Barksdale.
Right, thank you. So yeah, I enthusiastically support moving forward with this holiday and appreciate the suggestion by Councilmember Robertson. I was curious also if maybe we could provide any sort of resources around slavery during that time frame, just to help commemorate it even more. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Stokes.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate the comments that have already been made and appreciate Councilmember Robertson's laying it out very well on it. And I agree with that. I guess as the only Texan here and having heard this for a long time, and particularly from my grandparents in East Texas, I'm very excited to see this happen and that we recognize it. And I think it's very appropriate for Bellevue with our actions we've been taking on equity and everything else along these lines. And so enthusiastically take it and let's bring it back on consent and get it started. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Zahn.
Yes, I agree with this as well. The flag, the holiday, and I think in the past we've also included a proclamation for Juneteenth. So I think that it would be important to keep that going as well. And then to the degree that there's an opportunity to have a staff celebration around Juneteenth, because it is a celebration day of the end of slavery. And I think it's an important part of the city so that our staff sees not only is it a holiday, but in the days before it to be able to have an event for staff as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lee, followed by Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I support this. As we know, anything like this needs education, needs recognition, needs remembrance. And I think it's a very important milestone. We all know that the Black people have gone through, and the hardship and the history behind it. I think this has led to the civil rights movement and has led to many of the awareness improvements, and we're still working toward a more perfect union. And I hope that this also will lead to recognition of other inequalities, other races, other type of situation that we need to correct and be aware of. It's more than just symbolism, I think to me, it's the lesson we learn, remembering them and doing things, not just saying, acting, showing, but actually doing things for our young people, for our community, for other people, new immigrants and other new Americans, as any people that live here would feel that it's the right thing to do. So thank you. So, and I guess and everybody who are doing this so that we can remember and continue. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm enthusiastically supportive of this, as well as Councilmember Lee just said so well. It's important to remember these days of the historical significance. Love the idea from Councilmember Robertson about the flag. I would also add on to that, as I know that we do for Martin Luther King Day. We have banners within City Hall. Would love to see that happen as well as Councilmember Barksdale mentioned, any other resource needed to, I guess, properly commemorate the day being Juneteenth. So look forward to moving this forward and getting it done and getting on the consent calendar, and happy to provide a motion to do that, Mayor.
Thank you. Joy, is there anything we can do other than direct you to put on the consent calendar to get this passed quickly? Could we just pass it tonight, or do you need to get it on the consent calendar first?
It's ready to go next week on the consent calendar.
Okay, that sounds good. I'm just trying to expedite it as best we can. I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the city, reacting so quickly to the opportunity to make this a holiday. And I really think the city always does a good job in educating the community. And this is certainly a teaching moment. So I hope we do, as Councilmember Barksdale asked, take advantage of this opportunity to do that. So thank you. Is there a motion, Deputy Mayor?
I move to direct staff to bring back an ordinance amending the city code to add June 19th, recognized as Juneteenth, as an additional paid holiday to fully benefit city employees for final action at a future meeting.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Mr. McCommon, what is our next study session item, please?
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. Before the council for consideration are project and funding approvals from the Housing Trust Fund as recommended by the Executive Board of ARCH, or a Regional Coalition for Housing, as well as an amendment to the interlocal agreement among ARCH member cities to allow for a broader and more inclusive participation on its Community Advisory Board. Presenting tonight are Assistant Director of Community Development, Emil King, and from ARCH, Elsa Kings, who is the Housing Trust Fund Manager. So, Mr. King, I'll turn the presentation over to you.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm going to interrupt for just a moment because Councilmember Robertson is going to be recusing herself from this segment of the presentation and the vote. So, Councilmember Robertson, would you like to make a brief comment?
Was this the ILA first?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry, it was different order than in the agenda. Yes, I did want to recuse myself from this. As you all know, I'm an attorney. I practice with Inslee Best, Dozier and Ryder in Bellevue. We have a very robust municipal department, and we represent more than 10 cities. So 2 of our cities are other members of ARCH, and since the ILA affects them, I will not be voting on it. I will come back in and vote on the budget because that is just a Bellevue action to approve money that Bellevue spends. So I will vote on that, but will recuse myself from the ILA. So I'm going to leave the meeting now, and Charmaine will let me know when I can pop back in. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Emil.
Thank you for the introduction, Deputy City Manager McCommon. And good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and members of council. On behalf of the Community Development Department, I wanted to please offer up some opening comments for this item. Elsa, you can go ahead and bring up the title slide if you'd like. The City of Bellevue and ARCH are key partners in providing affordable housing in Bellevue and the East Side. This relationship dates back close to 30 years. The original interlocal agreement, first created in 1992, included Bellevue, Redmond, Kirkland, and King County as the founding members. This relationship is as important now as it's ever been. The ARCH Interlocal Agreement is a key guiding document, and tonight you'll be hearing about changes recommended by the Executive Board that will allow for broader, more inclusive representation on the newly named Community Advisory Board. Regarding the funding recommendations to be discussed tonight, the City of Bellevue's continuing support for the ARCH Trust Fund is very consistent with our affordable housing strategy. Bellevue's strategy has the overarching goal to create more affordable housing. This is accomplished through ARCH funding, as well as complementary efforts such as direct city investment through 1590, our housing contingency funds, land use incentives, and the city's multifamily tax exemption program as examples. Bellevue staff will be returning in the coming months to council with updates on those city-led efforts. To focus on tonight's topics, I'd like to now please hand things over to Elsa Kings from ARCH. Thank you.
Thank you, Emil. Good evening, council members. Thank you for having me. My name is Elsa Kings, and as previously mentioned, I am the Housing Trust Fund Manager at ARCH. We are here tonight to present 2 items in your agenda. The first is the amendment to the interlocal agreement, and the second is our 2021 Housing Trust Fund recommendations. The change to the interlocal agreement is a simple amendment initiated by our executive board to allow for a more diverse board. We are now asking our member cities to approve this change, and we are asking for council, seeking council direction to prepare legislation to approve the amendment.
Oh, are you done?
Yeah, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I apologize.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Okay, sorry about that. Any comments or questions on this? I see Councilmember Lee with his hand up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I've always felt that and believe ARCH has been our very capable housing agency, and a regional based, and it's a great regional body who have been very effective. And with all the housing activities, interests, and also the depth of complexity and the scope, I always felt that there's a lot of things ARCH should have in common with our housing efforts. So I think this seems to be, we are moving in the right direction, to take a look at making some kind of amendments. And so I think this hopefully is the first attempt doing that. And what amendments are going to be, how it's going to be affected, I don't think we have any detailed information. So obviously I hope it will become apparent when we get more detail. The first question I have is, which expansion is making it more diverse? I don't know what it means by making it more diverse. So perhaps, as part of the understanding better of the amendments to include more involvement, engagement of ARCH in this housing arena. Maybe you can explain to me what's the first item of diversity you're talking about.
Sure, absolutely, Councilmember. We are asking that we are able to obtain members that have a different and more diverse set of skills, members from different areas of expertise, as well as different backgrounds, and different different knowledge bases to be part of our board, and different experiences. And we really appreciate all of the members, all of their recommendations. And so we feel like it is important to have members from several different diverse ethnicities and backgrounds to be part of our board. And that's the diversity that we are seeking.
Thank you. I believe that this always should be the objective and goal anyway, for any organizations to be effective and to be inclusive, right? This is absolutely the first principle of getting best decisions, is to have a diverse opinion, diverse perspective, diverse solution, and common, common interests and solve problems. So are you saying that specifically opening up to include more cities
we're looking
on the board? is going to achieve some of this?
We're looking for a higher level of membership, persons that have a different skill set, that have experiences, that will allow that will allow their skills to be part of the conversations that we have. The board has a very important role in that they advise our executive board on the funding recommendations that we will be seeing shortly. And so we feel like members that have different experiences and different skill sets and come from different backgrounds will be able to allow us to make those decisions that will affect the community as a whole and be able to be representative of the communities that are.
I think Councilmember Lee is asking if new cities are going to be joining ARCH.
I cannot answer that question. I can get back to you on that. This specific amendment is specifically to allow for more more members to join the board, not specifically for cities.
Okay, yeah. So basically it's increasing number of members.
Correct.
To me, I think maybe it doesn't really help too much in terms of what you're talking about for diversity. I'm thinking of that if there are more cities involved, that might bring more.
It doesn't.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm just saying that. So it doesn't seem to be clear enough as to what you're thinking.
They're not adding more members because the members are the cities. They're adding more people to the board.
The number of members on the board. So there's a. So what's the current numbers now that's allowed?
We currently we're allowed.
Elsa, would you? Hi, Elsa. Do you want me to step in and see if I can help?
Sure. Thank you.
Apologize. This is Lynn. No worries. Elsa is doing a great job standing in for me, and I apologize. I had a scheduling conflict come up. This is Lindsay Masters with ARCH. The amendment in front of you does not have much of a change on the structures and the functions of what was formerly known as the Citizen Advisory Board. It is just a change to the name so that it can be called Community Advisory Board and make it clear that you do not have to be a citizen to be appointed to the board. The number of members issue was a suggestion again from our current executive board to allow them to make additional appointments when they have kind of a glut of good candidates during a recruitment. This has happened to us a couple times in the last couple of years. And so they would like to be able to make kind of appointments above the current cap of 15 members so that they can take advantage of those rounds of good applications, but then let the number come back down to 15 through natural attrition, which we see every year on the board. Does that help answer kind of what the purpose of the amendment is?
It does, but it's still not quite clear in my mind that what you wanted to accomplish. If it's just increasing the members, the numbers, doesn't tell you, you are looking for diverse experience, background, and all that stuff, and how is that going to be accomplished? And I would imagine the executive board has the authority to do that. Or I don't know who does, the membership cities. So I think this information seems to be lacking in your presentation right now. So it's probably, I guess, our fault that we don't know what
Councilmember Lee, I'm going to let you, Councilmember Lee, I'm going to let you continue this conversation online because it was very well presented in the packet. And this is the second time we've seen this, and it's a good explanation. So I'll give you a chance to go through that and ask the staff any questions later.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Next up, we have Councilmember Stokes, followed by Councilmember Zahn.
I appreciate this. I understand exactly what they're requesting. It's not an extension of the executive board. It's not bringing new cities on. It's clearly because of the success of their advisory board, who advises the executive board and are chosen by the executive board in looking at the resources and funding and all these things. They have a lot of people wanting to be on this, and they're making it clear they can go from 12 to 15 over when they have good appointments, and also focusing on enhancing board diversity, skills, and experience. I mean, it's really focused on the advisory board, not the executive board, and was recommended by a unanimous vote of the Arts Executive Board. It's an absolutely good thing to do. It's very focused, and I'm ready to vote for it when it comes back. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Zahn.
Yes, thank you. You know, I appreciate the Citizens Advisory Board changing to Community Advisory Board because words do matter. And I do think that for a number of our community members, if they see something that says citizen and they are not a citizen right now, that they may not see that that means them. And I also appreciate the flexibility to be able to leverage an opportunity if you have more candidates to be on the board that would be good members, to bring those voices, to have that latitude and flexibility. So I support all of these amendments. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands up. So is there a motion to pass the proposed ILA?
I move to direct staff to prepare legislation for future action approving amendments to the Arch interlocal agreement.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Let's bring Councilmember Robertson back and we'll move on to the second part.
Thank you, council members.
Thank you, Elsa.
Should I proceed or should I wait for?
Let's wait till we get Councilmember Robertson back.
Great.
I'm assuming she'll pop up where I can see her. Let me text her because I'm sure Charmaine is on this, but just.
Yeah, I've notified her.
Okay, great.
Thank you. She indicated she's on her way now.
Is it okay to proceed?
Well, yes, I see her here. Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So our second item on the agenda is the 2021 Housing Trust Fund recommendations. This year, we received a total of 5 applications totaling just above 3.8 million in requests and 351 units of affordable housing. I do want to note that there was one application in particular that was withdrawn for $2.5 million. The reason for the withdrawal of the application was that the project was in the early stages of feasibility and they did not feel like they were ready to move forward. Thus, they withdrew their application. We are expecting that the project could come back in future rounds. So we might see it in the future. The other note that I would like to mention is that one of the projects that previously applied for ARCH funding and was awarded came back this round for an additional request for funding. And we will talk about that project shortly. During this round, we had $6 million of available funding. Most of that funding came from general funds, as you can see on the pie chart on your screen. I do want to mention that as previously discussed with the withdrawal of the SRM application, we were undersubscribed for this round. We had approximately $3 million of unallocated funds. I further want to mention that our executive board is currently in conversations about potentially using those funds or allocating those funds for a project, affordable housing project in the near future. So please stand by. We will be coming to you with updates in the very near future once our executive board is able to provide some information on that allocation. We certainly do not want to sit on unused funding for affordable housing. Our ARCH funding this year was highly leveraged. For every $1 of local funds, we had $14 in public and private resources. Most of our leverage comes from tax exempt bonds and low-income housing tax credits. In addition, leverage King County and the state of Washington also provides funding to most of our projects. I now want to talk about some of the applications that we received. The first project that I want to talk to you about is the Horizon at Totem Lake project. This is a project that you had previously seen. As I mentioned, this project applied to us in 2020 for funding and was awarded a $4 million funds from the Arch Housing Trust Fund. The project is very well situated just off of 405. In the Totem Lake neighborhood of Kirkland. The project is a partnership between Horizon Housing and Inland, and I won't go into too much detail about this project because, again, this is a project that you have seen before. During the course of the year after the funds were previously awarded, the project found itself in a position that, due to cost, unforeseen conditions and cost increases, labor shortages, and other market changes, they had a financing gap and thus decided to return to Arch in 2021 for additional funding, as well as funding from King County. They requested 1.5 million of additional funding. As a reminder, this project is a large three building development with approximately 300 units of affordable housing. 30 of those units will be set aside for homeless families, and those units will be serving residents up to 60% AMI. The next project that we received an application for was the Friends of Youth New Ground Rehabilitation, also in the city of Kirkland. This project, as you can see, is very well situated. Again, just off of 405 with very close proximity to several, close proximities to several grocery stores and several shopping centers. The Friends of Youth New Ground Rehab project is a rehabilitation of an existing building currently in the Friends of Youth portfolio. It will be, it serves residents at 50% AMI, and it is specifically for residents whom are young adults, ages 18 to 24, who are seeking entry-level positions in the area, as well as higher education opportunities. The project consists of 14 SRO units, and it is an increase of 14 units from the existing building. The next project is the LifeWire Hope Starts Here project. This is a project that you might be very familiar with, as it did apply for 1590 funding previously, and it was awarded. The project consists of 25 units of housing for victims of domestic violence. 10 of the units will serve will be for transitional housing, and 15 of the units are dedicated for emergency housing. The project will serve tenants at 30 and 50% AMI. And due to the nature of the residents and for security reasons, we are asked to keep the exact location of the project confidential. However, I can say it is in the east side of Bellevue. With that, I am happy to answer any questions that you might have about the 3 projects that we just presented. And I am also seeking council direction for these 3 projects.
Okay, any comments or questions from anybody? I see Councilmember Lee, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The project in Bellevue and the one in Kirkland looks great. I have a question regarding the one in Totem Lake. They came back because they needed some more money. Any information regarding what is the problem? Are they able to finishing up or do whatever they were committed to do? Any information you could share with us?
Sure, thank you, Councilmember. That is a very good question, actually. Yes, the short of the answer is that with the anticipated additional funding received from King County and Arch, the project will be able to essentially fill the gap that they have projected in their budget. The project has not begun construction yet, but some of the reasons for the project gap, the shortages, was due to an increase in labor costs. The construction labor market has significantly changed in the past couple of years. We've seen increases of about 17% in construction costs, and that is one of the major reasons for the cost increases for this project.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Zahn, followed by Councilmember Stokes.
Yes, thank you. I support these 3 recommendations, and I can appreciate the challenges with the labor market as well as supply chain for any construction right now, especially things that are moving forward and some of the uncertainty with inflation. I actually had a question about the one that was, there was one that was withdrawn, and then there was one that we chose not to fund. And I'd like to understand a bit more about what was missing for the Attain Housing Totem Sixplex that led to the denial. It wasn't as clear to me what was missing. It said something about we were looking for a bit more design information. So can you comment a little bit more about that?
Councilmember, in regards to the Attain Housing project, our staff felt, and the CAB members felt like we needed additional information regarding the zoning of the project. We were not specifically sure if the zoning would be allowed, and as well as if the design of the building was consistent with the current zoning in the city. And that information was not provided in our application, in the application.
Okay, and there wasn't sufficient time to get additional information in order to look at them in this round. And so does that mean that they will wait a whole year in order to be eligible again? Because we do these on an annual basis.
We are in conversations with Attain Housing, and we have been in recent conversations, Lindsay and I, with the executive director about some of the information that we would like to see in the application. We hope that they come back to us in 2022 during the funding round, but we certainly encouraged them to continue to provide us information, and we will continue to provide feedback throughout the year.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Stokes.
I just wanted to say I really appreciate the work on this and the focus. It's good to see the numbers of units for people at the very lower range of affordability. And that's very, very positive. And particularly the focus on people that are struggling, people who have, really serious issues that need to be protected or need to have people working with them. I think that's really great, and we're increasingly putting those things together. And I think it's a very good plans. I know that the others that weren't funded for some reason or other, they're working with them, and But this is really good, and it's stronger, and I hope we can keep doing this and actually expand this as much as possible. But really good work, and I think from what I've heard about this and seen in other things, that some of the best work that's been done in some time on these. So it's really appreciate it, and be glad to see these things opening, have the openings, and get people in there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So Elsa, you know, I'm always trying to get as much money out the door as I can toward affordable housing. And I know that we have various tranches. We have the, what is it? I can't think of the number. Is it 1609? Is that right? And we
1590.
And the 1590. And we have an affordable housing fund as well. And so I just, you know, you referenced that you'll be coming back to us. I hope that you will, because, you know, we've made it possible to create a budget for affordable housing, and I'm very anxious to be spending it on affordable housing. So thank you for bringing these opportunities to us. Without any other comments or questions, is there a motion?
There is, Mayor. I move to direct staff to prepare legislation for future action, approving the Arch Housing Trust Fund allocations for Horizon at Totem Lake, Friends of Youth, and LifeWire.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. So here's what's going to happen next. I am going to recuse myself. I'm going to let the deputy mayor run the next part of this, the third and last part of this section. And then after the vote, we'll take a break and we'll come back. And if somebody can text me what time we're supposed to come back, I will be there. But I'm going to recuse myself because my husband works for the King County Housing Authority. And even though the funding does not go directly to them, it goes to the county. In the abundance of caution, I'm going to recuse myself from discussion and vote. So let me know when to come back, please. Thank you. Deputy Mayor, take over.
Thank you, Mayor. Looks like the mayor is gone. So Elsa, would you like to proceed?
Sure, thank you, Deputy Mayor. So the next project that was in our application round was the Leo Trailhead project. This is a large TOD project in central Issaquah. Again, very nicely located within Issaquah, close to many amenities and the future light rail station. The project itself is a collaboration with King County and Spectrum, and it is a large development, large mixed use, mixed income development. Within the Trailhead building, we have the Leo project, and it is a 5-unit single room occupancy SRO building, fully integrated into this other large TOD development. The Leo project is situated on the first floor, and it will be serving residents, developmentally disabled residents at 30% AMI. The one unique feature about this project, which I am very excited about, is that all of the residents, or the residents at Leo, will have access to the wonderful amenities within the Trailhead building, which include a health clinic, a behavioral clinic, and an opportunity center. And the last project I want to discuss is the Attain housing project. And this is a project, as we previously talked about, is the Totem Lake, is a project in Totem Lake neighborhood in Kirkland. Again, very closely and very well situated in the city of Kirkland. The project is a six-unit, 2-bedroom project at 30% AMI. And as previously mentioned, we decided to continue to work with Attain Housing with this project. There were several questions that we had, as previously mentioned. One of them was the zoning. Additionally, there were some questions about some other sources of funding, which we usually coordinate with other public funders. However, within the application, it was not clear where the the other funding sources, who the other public funders were. And so we provided this feedback to Attain Housing, and we did offer to continue to work with this application and possibly offer a earlier round, to answer your question, council member, to bring this project back if we were able to get it to a point where we felt it was ready to proceed. I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, happy to take any comments and seeking staff, city council recommendations for the Leo at Trailhead project specifically.
Great, thanks, Elsa. Great presentation. Any questions by my colleagues or comments? Council members on?
Yeah, I just want to say how excited I am that we are funding a project with disability, developmentally disabled with services right on the site. Because I think that we don't have nearly enough housing for this population of individuals who has needs that maybe conventional housing does not provide. And I would encourage our development community to really look at being able to provide more of this type of housing around in all of our communities. So happy to support this, and hopefully we see more of these in the future.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on my colleague? Councilmember Lee?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Could you put the mic back on just a quick minute? I think this is a great project. Yeah, that's Councilmember Zahn mentioned. I just want to take a look at where it's located. And you mentioned, while you're doing that, you're mentioning that it's close to other services that it would be helpful to this for the developmental for the residents here. What are the, I mean, just give me some information on that. Just say a few, what's close by.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely, council member. So within this building, the future building that is proposed, the residents will have access to, in the future, we're going to build in the building the services that I spoke about were a health clinic, a behavioral clinic, and an opportunity center. And so those services would be located inside of the building, the newly constructed building, once it is built.
Okay.
And the Leo residents would have access to those services.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Lee. Not seeing any other hands raised at this time or any other questions or comments. So therefore, is anyone willing to offer a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say no. Thank you. The motion passes, and we will now go on a break per the directive of the mayor. Let's re-adjourn in about 10 minutes, so 7:25. Thank you.
Handling things while I was gone. We have one more study session item. Mr. McCommon, would you like to introduce it?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The final study session item tonight is for council's information only, and will be a presentation about a pilot program that has been helping landlords and renters work out their challenges and connect them to important resources. Sharing the story of the pilot program will be Assistant Director of Community Development, Mike McCormick-Hunnelman, and Marcy Reynolds, the city's manager of the Conflict Resolution Center. Again, the presentation is for information only and no action is needed. With that, I turn it over to Mr. McCormick-Hunnelman.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager McCommon. Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Newenhouse, Council Member, it's a pleasure being with you here tonight. Tonight, we're going to share with you an update on the Eviction Resolution Pilot Program. This is actually a new program that is being provided by Bellevue's Conflict Resolution Center. And it is a program that was created last year amidst the pandemic in response to the end or anticipating the end of the statewide eviction moratorium. And the state legislature sought to partner with dispute resolution centers across Washington state to play a role to help landlords and tenants negotiate on rent arrearages or rent that was back due in order to help them to negotiate payment plans to avoid entering into the courts and filing for what's called unlawful detainers or evictions. And so they created this role. Tonight, as mentioned, this presentation really is for information only. No action is being requested at this time. But we do want to tell the story of the program, a little bit of the background of the program, a lot of detail about the process of the program and what's important for both landlords and tenants to know about the program. But there's also a story here about how the community is working together to provide a safety net for people who are both facing housing insecurity as well as carrying the burden of a lot of debt that has accrued over time. So what is unique about the Conflict Resolution Center and its role is it is providing this program both to the city of Bellevue and the city of Kirkland. And it is doing so in a way that is giving attention both to the needs of landlords and to the needs of tenants. It is not taking sides, but is helping them to create plans that are mutually agreed upon to help make landlords whole and help keep households housed and having good success in doing so. So we're going to share a little bit of the results and some of the trends that we're seeing. One question that we frequently get is how many households in Bellevue are facing eviction? How do we wrap our arms around that number and figure out what the need is? And the long answer, well, really the short answer is we don't really know. But let me give you some data points that might inform that going forward. So Marcy, who is our Conflict Resolution Center manager, is going to brief you on a lot of this program. And she's going to share a slide with you that says that in the King County metro area, we're estimating in January, 13% of all renters are behind in rent, which is a pretty big number. But we don't know, how does that apply to Bellevue? One of the things that I asked our economic development team is, how do you look at this and get your arms around it? And they noted that our unemployment rate in Bellevue from December was 2.7%, which is getting really close to pre-pandemic levels of 2.2%. So they're very encouraged economically in terms of our unemployment rate as a whole and getting back to pre-pandemic levels. But they did note that we peaked in the middle there at 11.6% unemployment rate, and that a lot of households and families were impacted with unemployment throughout the pandemic, and that has long-term consequences that are still catching up to them. And they also cited that our labor force numbers are showing right now that we're still about 3% lower in participation in our labor force than we were at the beginning of the pandemic, which they said is equal to roughly 4,600 households or participants that are no longer entering or returning to our workforce from what happened before the pandemic. And what they're hearing anecdotally is that the issues facing these households are preventing them from re-entering the workforce are issues like finding affordable housing or finding affordable childcare and having health-related concerns that are still unaddressed with the pandemic being ongoing. So those are two primary drivers that they're hearing about. And then finally, as a data point, I want to offer up that as a council, you provided significant funds, especially through our ARPA funds, that provided rent assistance dollars to our community to help them to stay housed. One of the things that happened is King County provided those funds as well. King County has so far distributed rent assistance funds to over 12,000 households in King County. And we also know that in terms of our specific Bellevue specific dollars, that by January, those went out to over 600 residents that addressed 1,000 months of back rent and rent arrearages already. So there's been a significant contribution that has been made to kind of offset the amount of folks that would come into this program and start facing and needing to negotiate on evictions and rental repayment plans. Before I hand it over to Marcy, I do want to say one final note, and this is obvious. I just cited a lot of numbers, and I know that they mean things, and we track all of that. But one of the things that's true in this program, as we look at, here's another number, 533 official IRP cases since the program started on November 1st last year. Each one of those cases represents a landlord who is struggling with debt and loss of income, and households that are facing housing insecurity and just not knowing where they're going to live and how they're going to make ends meet. So we're going to talk about numbers and we're going to talk about program, but I know as a council and I know as a community, we see each one of these cases as real people and real lives that have been impacted by a significant event like this pandemic. And I just want to acknowledge that human piece as we do our presentation. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Marcy to walk us through and give us an introduction to the eviction resolution pilot program. Marcy.
Thank you, Mike, and good evening, council members. Mike has just shared a whole lot about our program, and I'm going to give you more details on it. We are one of the many organizations on the east side in King County in Washington State helping to stop the dam of debt and housing insecurity in the area. And we are a program that is housed in the city of Bellevue. The city of Bellevue funds us, as well as we belong to a statewide organization, Resolution Washington. And we have, through the state legislature, through Resolution Washington, first of all, a mandate that says that we will serve people, we will serve the needs of justice, of equal access to justice for people in the community. And that is how it's followed through that over the years. We have been given the responsibility by the legislature to help with foreclosure back in 2008, and we are looking to be doing that later this year. And we have just last year were by the state legislature who passed Senate Bill 5160 said that we will be the first stop for landlords and for any landlord wishing to evict for COVID-related arrears. They have to come to us to try to negotiate a repayment plan. And so that has been legislated and it is meted out through the administration of the courts. Next slide, Mike. So Mike was just talking numbers, 13% of what? I mean, the numbers are all over the place. We don't know if we have 2,000, 4,200, 6,000 people who are in danger of being evicted. And one of the most difficult things is we don't know how many people just left without being evicted, just ran because they didn't think there was going to be a net for them. But we can look at the numbers at, anyway, let's move on and I'll tell you more as we move along. So the Senate Bill 5160 started a pilot program eviction resolution pilot program. And through this, tenants have two things. They have a right to create a repayment plan, and they also have right to counsel. If they by chance do end up being evicted or having unlawful detainer filed against them, they actually get to go to court and have a Housing Justice Project attorney assigned to them. And Housing Justice Project also has some money to give. Landlords must offer a repayment plan through our program, and it's a 2-year program that will last until 2023. But it is thought that if it's successful, and so far it has been, that we will continue doing this for any cases, not necessarily COVID related, but to keep tenants out of courts and to maintain their housing stability down the road, because it's almost impossible to get a place to rent if you've got a filing against your name. Next, Mike. So just going to share with you, and because this is being shared with the public, I think it's important that people understand the steps, because a lot of people, both landlords and tenants, come to us and don't know what the process is. And so this is a wonderful opportunity to share what the process is. So a landlord will file an eviction resolution program notice, as well as a pay or vacate notice, and at the same time has to present a repayment plan to the tenant if the tenant is in arrears. And the tenant has 14 days to respond. By legislation, the legislature says that our center must try to get in touch with that tenant 3 times during those 14 days. And so we have a system of getting in touch with tenants through many ways, lots of culturally sensitive ways to try and get in touch with people, and also trauma-informed ways. And so we have a good rate of doing that. And then once the tenant has responded, they sign, the tenant and the landlord sign an agreement to mediate. And then they go from intake into the conciliation phase. And then we have an indefinite period of time, but we try to wrap it up within 14 days to a month, conciliation, going back and forth between landlord and tenant, and also helping the tenant apply for rent assistance. We're not helping them, but guiding them to how they can do that. Also teaching them the process, looking at their financial situation, trying to help everyone make an agreement they can live with, because we don't want unsustainable repayment plans. The tenant can't make the third that the landlord is the most that the landlord can ask for, and they can't make that. We certainly don't want a default that's going to end them up in court. So then once there's a repayment plan agreement, that's it. They sign the agreement and they can move forward. If there's no agreement, the landlord does receive a certification of participation in this process, and then can proceed to court. We have a low rate of those. We have mostly repayment plans. I'll tell you numbers in a bit. Next, Mike. And so this is because we are here. I want to share with you, many of you are landlords, and also share with the community sort of the process that goes through. So as I shared before, the landlord needs to share, has to give to the tenant a ERP notice, a pay or vacate notice, and a repayment plan. And at the same time they send it to the tenant, they send it to us. And that starts the clock ticking, the 14 days going. And then we contact everybody who needs to be involved. And then we are a single point. We have some landlords who have many properties, many tenants, and we actually will assign that landlord a single intake person and a single conciliator to help them with their cases, so they don't have to repeat the same thing over and over again. We work very closely with landlords while at the same time are neutral landlords and tenants. We encourage tenants and landlords, if there are landlord funds, but there were landlord funds, to apply for rent assistance. And here's the big favor we wish to ask all landlords is to use the My Bellevue app, because it's tied right into our database and saves us from having to enter the cases. So next, I want to speak to tenants. And it's a scary thing being a tenant with a huge debt. You know, we have tenants from 1 month behind to 2 years behind. And that's a lot of debt if one's never had that kind of debt before. So they may receive, the tenants may receive a pay or vacate and IRP notice. And sometimes they think that's eviction. Oh no, I'm evicted. So we want to say, no, there's many a step to take before you're evicted, and you may not be. So we encourage tenants to respond to us when we reach out within the 14 days. And also to let tenants know that that we will refer them to free legal consultation. We work with Eastside Legal Aid, as well as we work with Northwest Justice and the Housing Justice Project. So we refer people to get some legal consultation. And we also are networked very closely with all of the Eastside rental assistance agencies who right now the Bellevue money that the council has given to the city is about the only money that is going right now. So and that's, so we encourage them to apply for rental assistance. And right now that's moving pretty quickly. So here, not following up, not answering our calls will result in a certification. In other words, the landlord has everything he or she needs to go to court to file unlawful detainer. So Mike, next, thank you. So that we aren't in this alone. When we first started this, you know, as we all know, we were scrambling. It felt like a MASH unit and trying to pull together everything we needed to help. And there was the rent assistance. How do we shore up the rent assistance world? And so we created networks for that. Then we're shoring up the statewide IRP systems. How do we create a production line for this process, and working statewide with all of that? And then looking at, if people did fall through the net and if they were evicted, how do we help them to homefulness? How do we help them not go to the streets? And so we help work with these three, what I call the three nets. So we have community partnerships in King County on the east side, and we work with statewide, we work with the courts. And then Mike, next slide, we also work within the city. We have partnerships within the city. And we work very closely with human services, with Bellevue Fire Care. Sometimes we find people who are really in dire straits in their homes, and we refer them to Bellevue Fire Cares. Many City Hall is offering conciliators and intake people. Work with utilities on putting out the word. We work with human services, utilities, and the homelessness outreach, people with trying to get the word out to the community about what they need to do. The next slide, Mike. So here's our stats. That case number 381, that was 3822. We are now up to 533 since that date. That's how fast cases are coming in. I think the number that we're proudest of is that only 8% have been certified to go to court to be evicted. And luckily there's Housing Justice Project there to catch them. And the other thing that I think we're pretty proud of here is that we have 84% of the tenants respond to our notices within the 14 days. I am seeing that number drop off because I think the people right now who've been holding on to this debt the longest have frozen or left. They may have left. I don't know what's happened, but we're trying to figure out how to get in touch with them now. And also we have people who don't speak English at all. And we have worked a lot with the organizations in the community to help use what I call the chain of trust. If people who don't speak English, who are part of that community, trust somebody, some entity, we try to connect with that entity so they can say, you can trust us, you can answer that call. So next slide, Mike. So here are some trends that we're seeing. And of course, there's a gazillion more. but tenants are really hurting. The tenants who got into arrears are not just in arrears, they're still having to pay rent. And the arrears, landlords are entitled to 1/3 of their rent as repayment plan. Not all agreements go to that, but it's conceivable that a tenant can have their present rent and they can have a repayment plan of 1/3 of that rent. And then what is happening is rents are going up. There's an average of 27% in Bellevue. So we're looking sometimes that the renter is paying 60% on top of what they were paying at the beginning of the pandemic. Now, and there's landlords. Landlords have been asked to hold the debt. The landlords have been holding this together through accumulating a great deal of debt and loss. In order to accept some of the monies, some of the particularly the state money and federal money, they had to agree to forgive up to 50% of the debt. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. And then sometimes they don't recover anything from a tenant. And sometimes landlords are being incredibly generous and just saying, hey, how about if you just pay me this much? So that happens oftentimes in a mediated agreement. Right now, the city of Bellevue's funds that was given, the ARPA funds, are all that we have for Bellevue residents to apply for right now. There are no county funds at the moment. There is word that there will be some in May, but I've not been able to get any concrete word on that. One of the other things that's kind of interesting in looking at statewide data is the number of women who received rent assistance funds and who have women with children. And I would say that it was mentioned earlier tonight that, or I think Mike may have mentioned it, that daycare has been a huge issue of parents not feeling like it was safe to send their kids to daycare being too expensive, daycare being crowded, there not being enough daycare for people. So that is a big issue that has kept people from having job stability. So next slide, Mike. So here's an upper, okay? The upper is, I almost want to cry. I mean, I will, as Mike was saying, I hear a lot of stories all day, so my heart's on my sleeve, okay? But our volunteers are amazing. We have, right now we have about 37 active volunteers in our cadre. We have 14 experienced volunteers taking cases, these hard cases. We have 5 veteran volunteers who are mentoring to them because we don't have enough, because we're so busy. And we have 15 new volunteers who were just come in tomorrow. We're getting training, they're getting a training in how to deal with cross-cultural conciliation cases. Last year, they put together, they gave the city, they gave the community 3,500 volunteer hours. And I dare say that's going to be much larger this year. So, you know, that is a huge benefit to this program. That's how we've been able to keep this going. We've also added 4 staff to our program. Next slide, Mike. And so we're not asking you for anything. It's your turn to ask us anything that hopefully we have answers to.
You're on mute.
Yes.
Thank you,
Councilman
Marcy.
Robertson. Oh, you call. I don't call on everybody.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I had myself muted.
The mayor was muted.
I apologize. Yeah, well, that's okay. You don't want this job. But Marcy, thank you very much for the presentation. And I see Deputy Mayor's hand up, and I see Councilmember Barksdale and Councilmember Robertson. So let's start with the Deputy Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mayor. And first, Mike and Marcy, thank you so much for the presentation. And Mike, thank you for, I think, setting up the presentation in such a great way too, and in a way that really kind of balances the fact that, and Marcy added on to that in her comments, where the tenants, due to COVID, due to loss of job, due to daycare, are hurting just as much as some of these, especially some of these smaller landlords who are constantly forgiving debt. And working with the tenants. So it's a multi-pronged issue, and both sides are hurting in order to address this issue. It's so great to see that some landlords are even forgiving debt. That's just so fantastic to see, because they understand the circumstances and the extraordinary circumstances of this pandemic. So the fact that they're willing to do that is extraordinary and so good to see in our community. So a couple of questions that I have for you. So first, you mentioned that you think this program is successful. I'm just curious, what metric are you tracking in terms of success? Is it some of the numbers that you're seeing here? By the way, some of the numbers in our packet were a little bit different, so I wanted to just double check on that too. Sorry. Okay, so you were aware of that. Okay.
Well, it's a fluid situation. The numbers are changing constantly. It's just.
Yeah. And we had 488 cases, but here I see like a 300 number. So can you just clarify what is the correct number and up to
as of today, 533 cases.
Oh, okay.
Yes, but we get like we come in, it's like a ticker tape. Our inbox is just boom, 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 cases coming in all the time, especially the beginning of the month.
Gotcha.
It's huge.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then your success.
And then you asked about success. I would say that where we consider it success is, as I mentioned, having tenants respond. That's huge because sometimes people run.
Oh, sure.
And then the other thing is that for the landlord and tenant to actually enter into a repayment plan agreement that the tenant is keeping. Mm-hmm. And then the third is that we're keeping people from landlords from having to send somebody to eviction, from tenants being referred to court, having to show up in court. Only 8% of the cases, though, so far are being referred to, are getting a certification where the landlord can file for unlawful detainer. So that's what we consider successful.
Okay.
As well as I would say that our relationship with the rent assistance organizations has been a huge success. We have weekly meetings with we call it EFAM, Eastside Financial Assistance Meeting, and we are a family, and we're just who has money, who has what, do you have money for this? I have a person over here, and there's this constant exchange. So I would say that that's successful. And to add a little bit more, I would say that the tightening of all of the safety nets has been a point of success. So those are going to be tight from here on out. This was a good opportunity for us to look at what wasn't in shape, and now we've gotten in shape for any future bad news. So yeah.
Gotcha.
So those are the things. Yeah.
Okay, and then that leads to my next question. So for me, to come to a successful resolution, speed here is paramount. So. I'm wondering, because for both sides to get that agreement, I think is real key. So on average, how lengthy is that process before an agreement can be reached with the tenant for a repayment program? And then the follow-up question is how often is that successful? So how many times do tenants default on the payment plans, and how many of them don't and are successful?
Deputy Mayor, I'm going to stop you there, and Marcy, I'm going to stop you there. We'll come back to those last two questions because we have a bunch of hands up, and if they
So you asked about defaults and how long. So I'll have those down. How long to agreement? Okay, I got those questions down. Okay.
We'll have Councilmember Barksdale followed by Councilmember Robertson, Stokes, and Zahn. Go ahead, Councilmember Barksdale.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So I'll focus on two points here. One, I guess I'm really interested in sort of the fact that I think you said the landlords are the ones who deliver the ERP notices. So is there no way for the tenant to approach? I guess I'm just interested in understanding that. And then the second part is, I think you mentioned that some of the landlords are refusing rent assistance, or like what, I guess I'm trying to get a sense of, it seems like it's initiated by the landlord can refuse rent payments. Like what else is the case here? Can they refuse going through the IRP process at all?
No, okay. So first of all, yes, we have many tenants who get in touch with us. As a matter of fact, prior to the end of the moratorium, it was largely tenant referred. But those are not official IRP cases. So we have far more cases that aren't included in those numbers that are tenant referred. IRP just means that there's been an IRP notice served and that it is potentially court destined, or it has to do with the courts. And so yes, many tenants do call us, and we help them get rent assistance. And I won't go into the weeds there, but yes, we have lots of relationships with tenants. In terms of landlords are sometimes refusing, like EPREP, were county funds that were being given out. And part of the deal there was a landlord had to forgive 40, 50% of the debt. And some of them said, no, I'm not willing to do that. So, I can't blame people. People have bills to pay, mortgages to pay. So, that's the thing they were refusing. Okay. Does that answer your question?
It does. And I guess just who delivers the herb?
We don't touch that. That's the landlord, but it gets sent to us. We get a copy sent to us.
Okay,
we deal with lots of papers. There's 7 forms for every case. It's a lot of papers. Yeah. Not my forte either. This has been a learning curve.
Thanks for your work.
Goodness for my staff. Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Robertson.
Thank you. I'm so glad we had this presentation tonight. I didn't know that Bellevue was engaged in this. And I'm really proud of the work, Marcia, that you and Mike, that you and the team and all these volunteers have done. We're a very caring community, and I think you guys are living that every day. So thank you. I don't really have any questions. I just wanted to comment on, we have all this rental assistance, and I guess a lot of them, other funds are running out, but we still have so many community members who are hurting. They might have multi-generations in a household, and they're at the verge of being homeless. And so I'm so glad that we're involved in this. I'm surprised that we still have several million. How much rental assistance do we still have available from Bellevue?
I understand that there's not been a report yet of that officially. Yeah. I mean, we're constantly asking each other in the East Side Assistance group who has money, but I don't know official numbers, and I'd hate to say that publicly,
Mike, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, I asked that same question of Parks and Community Services because they track ARPA rent assistance dollars. Their last count was there were about 2 million that were still at play available for the community.
Right.
So that's the latest information that we have.
I think it's in several million. I'm like, oh my gosh, how much is there? We need to get the word out because there are people, I think there are definitely people that are just scooping and running. But there are people that are very eligible for that program. They don't know about it. And so I don't know what we're doing in terms of outreach, but I think we need to be letting all of the Human Services Agency knows and be pushing this out. There is still time to apply for rental assistance from the city of Bellevue. We don't know. I mean,
and I will say that we did from the very beginning, actually beginning in October 2020. We began making relationships with all of because we saw this coming, and we started building relationships and getting the word out to all of the assistance agencies in the community and all of the cultural agencies and networking and saying, please call us, please don't run, please apply. And so we've had this huge network of getting that word out and a constant thing. But we certainly, as you were just saying, could use even more push with getting more out on TV. And the unfortunate thing is that EPREP, the county program, has dried up since January, and they were doing a whole lot of education. And so here we are, the cities are needing to step up, I think, in that way.
Great. So Mike, Could you coordinate, please, with communications team and try to get this out there a little bit more, find some different tools to get it out there?
Absolutely, we will do that. Parks and Community Services does maintain a real-time website for agencies with available rent assistance funds that's posted on our city website. But we can communicate more that's there for the public.
Yeah, if we can push it out, I don't know how many people that would be eligible are on my Bellevue app. We could push it out to there. We could push it out through social, through Nextdoor. Everyone know, everyone that might be hurting knows someone else. And if we push it out through Nextdoor, there's still money available. Maybe we can save some more people from losing their homes. So I've taken up too much time. I will stop now. Thank you. This is a wonderful, wonderful program.
Councilmember Zahn, followed by Councilmember Stokes, and then Councilmember Lee.
Yes, thank you. When I think about the 553 cases, those are people, those are families, those are households that we're helping. And so absolutely, it's heartbreaking that both tenants and landlords are working through the huge backlog of rent. So I'm glad to hear that we are pushing out the ARPA funds. It was just a couple days ago that we celebrated the 1-year anniversary of ARPA being available and getting $20 million over 2 years, and how quickly we got the funding available. Because I was hearing from Centro Mexicano that our program was very unusual and it did help a lot of people with rent in arrears. So the fact that we now have this program under your tutelage about the resolution pilot to then work through for those that were not able to be part of the ones that was able to get their rent paid, in the ones in arrears that were able to collaborate and work through with the landlords and the tenants. I guess I'm also wondering too about the outreach and whether we can reach out to Eastside for All, IACS or IAWW, CISC, ACRS, because what I'm also hearing is that sometimes the ones that are struggling the most are not native language speakers.
Right.
And so they aren't aware of the programs. And in fact, then they do have this concern and they flee. So is that part of the partnership that you're building with the community? And then the volunteers, which is just amazing. What did you say? The 3,500 hours of volunteers. Do they are they able to do the translation, or do you have an interpreter that might help if the renter is not a native language speaker?
Oh yeah, I mean we really use best practices on all of our outreach and all of our intake. City constraint says we have to use a professional language interpreter as well as translation. So we translate all of our flyers out, and with our East Side assistants and with all the cultural organizations, we send flyers out in multiple language that are very simple, that say, here, do this, don't do this, call us, as well as our the way we answer the phone, the way our emails responded in I would say that the predominant culture that has been impacted is the Spanish speaking culture. And it's huge. And so our first push was to try and get them involved. First of all, know they could trust us. So we worked with CCM. We worked with For Tomorrow, worked very, very closely with those organizations to do outreach through them. But there could be so much more done,
And as we come out of COVID, will we be meeting with the landlord and tenant in person? Because sometimes trying to mediate over Zoom seems like it would be really challenging to read body language and try to understand that. So is that where we're headed to?
No, it's interesting. We do most of our work, and have even before COVID, through phone conciliation. And I will share with you that our research has shown that we're more successful that way because it is more culturally sensitive, that most of the world uses an intermediary to resolve their conflicts. So not meeting face to face where you lose face, so this is a more culturally sensitive way to go about this. And it's more empowering for a tenant who facing a landlord there's a power imbalance there. And so this way power can be balanced more evenly. They can actually say what they need to say to the conciliator who's being the conduit between them. So
Okay, thank
we
you.
will probably
Let's
continue this
move
practice.
on to Councilmember Stokes, and we can go back around if we need to.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, this is really amazing. Really appreciate knowing about this. It's one of those things that's going on, and everybody's up doing other things, and in the meantime, you're doing this great stuff, and it really is helpful. And I appreciate the comments by my colleagues at this point, and I know we'll have more on this. The kind of questions, I think there's some things out there in terms of shortage of staff, shortage of people who are volunteers and all. That's always a struggle. And I hope that, this is an awareness thing that we really, really need. And that's been good. We need to get out into the community. And, hopefully we'll continue the conversation on how we could help with those from that standpoint. The other is knowing more about how do we be more successful in helping people who are homeless struggle with their issues. It's hard enough when you have your house and you have the family and you have other things going on and struggling with that, and then not having to deal with all this must be extremely hard mentally and physically. And again, the question is, do we have enough people helping with that? And how can we, I think getting out to the community as a whole and letting people know what we're doing. And I think it's something that Bellevue needs to, and we've been doing it, but actually help in terms of getting the word out, and how do we even get more people involved in this, because it's going to take a while to get this. And this is something, the other side of it is to really let people know that, we understand the landlords are a lot of people. It's just a job for them. It's not that they're making tons of money. They're out there it's a job, and they're really, it's struggling also with this. So how do we help them too? So it's both of it. It's not just one or the other. And I appreciate that very much in your approach on this. Anyhow, I think the other factor is, can we do more with other organizations to help with people getting jobs, help with people with childcare, with other issues like that? I know we have a lot of organizations out there working all the time with people who are struggling like this, even before the pandemic. And it seems to me, again, that's something we can work on and get more people involved. The more people understand it, then we can help and be in a much better place when we finally get out of this pandemic, and because we've actually applied things as we go along. So anything we can do and the city can do to really help this, I think would be good. It's just fantastic program, and really appreciate the work you've done on it. And
thank you.
It's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Stokes. And then Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think this is a great program. I think Marcy really kind of said it just right before this, that there's a personality dynamic between landlord and tenants. So I think it's important that there's a mediator, especially it's regarding something both sides want, because one side needs to have a rent place to live. The other side is providing it willingly. So there's nothing to begin with. There's something in common. But it's because circumstances has created a situation where they no longer can sustain their relationship. So you are trying to help with the solution. And the solutions here is you get money, right? And you are the one that's going to, and they don't know that. Landlord don't know that, tenant don't know that. But you know that. So you have the resource. So you have the ability to find out from each what's the challenge, what do they need, and you're providing the need. Yeah. And I think this is very good. So it's your result actually have proven success. 98% of them don't need to have what they call. They resolve the differences before. That's a great number. Where do you get 98%? So, and it's insurance. It's a tool for people to go along. So I don't think we need to look for problems. We don't need to. You know, and there are people I hear in some places. There are people who live, like you said, 2 years they don't want to pay, and they decide not to pay. There's no relationship about no matter what you do, you know. I mean, but we are not talking about those folks, right? We're not talking about leeches that just don't want to pay. You go from free place to free place. You're talking about really honest people that we are very much passionate about to help, and I think that's what's reflected. I think in Bellevue, which is a good thing. Like Mike said, you don't have all the numbers, but the point is what you're doing, you know, and the people you're helping, they're not desperate, they're not on the street, they're not worrying. So it's assurance to the renters who need a place to live, assurance to the owners, landlords, that they can continue to provide that in a relationship you are helping to provide. I think you're doing a great job and great work. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Councilmember Lee. You know, I remember on April 4th, 2020, our city council convened a special meeting just to get these dollars out the door as soon as we could. And those dollars didn't just come from the council contingency that we allocated as soon as we could. It also came from community partners. It came from our large employers. It came from people who contributed to the Seattle Fund, and those dollars came over. It came from ARPA, it came from the county. There is a lot of contributors to this fund. And I'm, you know, all this work, Marcy, that you're describing that you've done, this is what we asked be done when we elected not to do a moratorium, because we were advised that it was better to put all our energy into helping people pay their rents, so they didn't have to dispute it at the end of the day and have 2 years of back rent and have to leave their work or their children and go to court and advocate for themselves. So I think you're hearing real appreciation and for the work that you've done and admiration for how effective it has been. I feel so good about this program. I feel good for the renters and I feel good for the landlords. So my question to you is, does the county still have dollars out there that they may allocate to rental assistance for certain individuals, or how does that work?
Well, I don't know if I'm supposed to say hearsay. The
Okay,
hearsay came from.
The answer is yes.
The hearsay came from on high, from a high place, but I won't say who. But that there is some organization happening at the county level of both state to get both state and federal dollars out, but perhaps beginning in May, they wanted to reorganize differently than the EPRAP program. So that we're crossing our fingers that happens, because cases are still coming in. And I do want to answer Councilman Neuenhouse's questions if I can go back there, or is that?
You can, if you finish.
If you have time, okay. I'll try to answer quickly.
No, okay.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Did I answer your question? I thought I did. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Go ahead.
I answered your question. The answer to your question was that is that I believe there are what I have heard. The word is that there is going to be another organization, or the county is going to put together another effort to get funds out in May, but not now. And I have not heard any more on any website. No emails have gotten me more answers than that. So that's what I know.
Just to clarify that the official answer is to be determined, Mayor.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're not alone in our funding source. There always, it's not just us doing this. We have community partners still helping us with this, and I appreciate it. Okay, so we'll go back around in case anybody, and we'll start with the deputy mayor. You had 2 more questions if they didn't get answered.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'll repeat the questions just in case. No problem.
I have them written down.
Oh, you did? Okay, if you've got them written down, great.
Yeah. It's so the first question, or one of the questions, was about how long does it take to get an agreement. Well, there is a mandatory 14 days that the tenant has to respond. And we encourage, we by statute have to tell landlord and have to tell tenants that they can access legal consultation before they sign an agreement. So that is a piece in it. We also encourage them to apply for rent assistance, such as the money that City of Bellevue has given. So those two things create some time variabilities, can hold up the process. But I would say that if they're not relying upon rent assistance and they're not waiting for legal assistance, which there isn't a lot, they're backed up like crazy. We usually can get people out within a month. We'll get an agreement without a month, but some cases have been protracted for a couple of months, some for even 3. Yeah, but it's mostly because of those variables.
That's fantastic. You should add that to your success metrics. That's really
okay.
Great. And then and the second part of the question
was about defaulting.
Yeah.
And you are speaking my fear from the very beginning. And this is not the place where I want to end this show, but it has been a fear from the beginning that tenants are going to have a debt that's huge. And they're trying to pay rents and rising rents on top of the debt. And that scares me. That scares me. We have started to see some defaults. We do renegotiate. The statute says they can come back and renegotiate. So we do that. But that is why we train our volunteers, we train our both staff, all our conciliators to try and have sustainable agreements that a tenant can pay, looking at how much they have, not how much they think they're going to earn, because some people don't want to admit that they don't earn that much. We really try to make it reasonable and and sustainable. But there are starting to be defaults. And I will say that we're starting to see some landlords have held on to they've had people in debt for, almost 2 years, and they're just starting to file with us. They've been holding on, hoping they could get money, hoping they could get a job, whatever. And now we're seeing big cases come in, big arrears coming in. And that's why I'm glad there's still some City of Bellevue money that's out there. Indeed. And why I'm glad that we're here to help them, because this is not over. It's not over.
Exactly right.
Well, thank you for
answering those 2 questions, and still a great program, but I understand your concern about what the future holds there, and appreciate the update as we move forward. But thank you for all your great work here. We are a caring community, and this is, this highlights how caring we are, and we want to make sure that people that can stay in their homes in this city. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? I see Councilmember Barksdale, go ahead.
I just have one clarifying question. I mean, because, there are different ranges of landlords, right? The mom and pop landlords, the multifamily, larger apartment complexes. Do you have an idea of what composition? The faces keep moving across the screen because everybody's raising their hand.
I know, I've seen that too.
Yeah. Do you have an idea of what that looks like in terms of size of landlords or rental units?
I need to come back with that answer, but I will say that it was early on, even before the moratorium ended, we were doing the single property or the small landlords were coming to us, and we were working out negotiations even before we had this official pilot with them and their tenants, because they had to survive.
Yeah.
It's both landlord and tenant had to survive, and we would work out creative, not court dictated kinds of agreements between them to see if they could work something out. But I can get that back. I can get that to you. And that is another thing that's kind of sad, is that some people have just said they can't afford to do this, so they're selling. They sold their buildings because they couldn't afford, or they're trying to sell because they couldn't afford to keep it going. Yeah, so that is a reality.
Thank you.
But I'll get that number if you'd like. Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Council members, okay, I think Councilmember Stokes, is your hand up again? So, yeah, okay, and then Councilmember Zahn. Go ahead, Councilmember Stokes. Oh, excuse me, you're muted. Council members, there you go.
Yeah, I'm right here. I'm here. Okay. I really appreciate this. This is really great. And I think we're doing as much as we can, and we're working on that. And I know we're talking about how to deal with these issues right now, but it just, listening to this and thinking about it, we're still dealing with issues that are much larger than this. The reason we have these problems is because we have a lot of inequalities, and people shouldn't have to be, going from paycheck to paycheck and not being able to keep up with rent. And landlords should be able to collect rent, reasonable rents, and not have to go through all this. We're spending one hell of a lot of time, energy, and all on battling with something that is just overwhelming. And I'm hoping that we really take this into account. And when we talk about other things we're doing, affordable housing, how all of these other factors that tries to get everybody to be able to live reasonably well. And because we just can't keep doing this. This wears everybody out, and it solves a lot of problems, but it leaves a lot of problems behind. So I think it's really great you brought this to us, Marcy, and it's really fantastic what we're doing, but it also says we got a heck of a lot more work to do overall. So thank you very much. Great work.
Councilmember Zahn.
Yes, well, first of all, I just want to make sure I don't forget to say to Marcy and all the volunteers to extend our deepest gratitude as volunteers that they're doing this really, really hard work for our community, both the tenant and the landlords. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And then I want to make sure that we don't forget about the fact that, although maybe COVID is diminishing, so maybe the health concerns have gone away, the childcare piece continues to be real. So the limited childcare. So we might want to better understand what are some things we can do on the childcare piece that can help with that situation. I'm also wondering, this is only residential, so commercial renters are not part of this, so we're not able to do any help with that area, and that may be another area to talk about at some point. And then lastly, I would say, although we still have a couple of $1 million that we're going to make sure we let people know about, we are going to be hearing about ARPA year number 2. And I do think it would be important to understand with the 10 million that we have available for year number 2, understanding what component of that we may want to offer as rental assistance again, versus other things that we might want to use it for. I'm actually at the National League of Cities where a lot of the sessions here is about ARPA funding, what cities are using ARPA funds for. And tomorrow we're going to be breaking out into small, medium, and large cities to hear from each other about how different cities across the country are using their ARPA funds. And so it's made that top of mind for me as I think about year number 2 of ARPA, and just being really thoughtful about how we use that that limited resource for our community. Thanks.
Great. Okay. Well, this has been a really good discussion. Again, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for answering all our questions. And most importantly, thank you for all you're doing.
You're welcome.
With that, we are adjourned, and I will see everybody next week. Thank you. Good night.